Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. Australia are the number one test and ODI team in the world at the moment. So I'm a pretty happy man tonight, especially happy because Jelisa Apps is returning to the show. Jelisa, welcome back.
Hello, I'm back in my car again. I promise I don't live in my car. I'm just on the way to the Panthers and Eels game, and then I can have a nap.
And she's off again.
It's my favourite trick.
At least your car has good internet. And joining us, of course, is Paul Dennett. Paul, good evening.
Good evening. I'm doing tonight's show without caffeine as a trial, so I'm probably going to be terrible. Apologies.
And look, I was in a good mood today, but I've got to say, one of our listeners annoyed me on Twitter, Michael Viney.
What a surprise. What a surprise that you got annoyed, Menace.
Well, you wait. I think you'll be on my side with this one. Jelisa, you're a nice person. I tweeted out a fun domestic cricket season is all over for me. Yeah. And then I did a few other things and tweeted out a photo. Michael Viney's written, I've heard that the domestic cricket season is still going. Now, that's a bit of a snarky tweet. Now, come on, you're a nice person. You would never tweet that.
I think that the joke is lost. I think that assumes the knowledge that the Sheffield Shield final is on. And how are Jelisa and I to know that?
Yeah. So was he having a go at you, or was he having a go at New South Wales?
I think he was having a go at me.
I reckon he was having a go at New South Wales. I think
he was having a go at me. Anyway, to put me in a bad mood, it was very clear that the tweet was about my cricket season being over. So anyway, Michael, I know Perth WA are playing in the Shield final, but no one cares on the Eastern States, you muppet. All right. So look, lots of big cricket news. As I said, Australia are the number one test and ODI side in the world. Paul, really order restored.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how it's been for the vast majority of history, and it's the correct state of affairs. The only thing, I, as you possibly know, hate superstition, but I can't shake this stupid, idiotic, superstitious feeling of like normally in the lead up to a men's 50 over World Cup, we lose these sorts of series and then win the World Cup. I hope the inverse isn't true, and I hate myself for saying that. But I can see how it would be that the odds are we're not going to win this World Cup. And I'll look back, we won the series that no one remembers and didn't win the World Cup. And I'm already getting angry about that, even though it hasn't happened.
I just always maybe more.
Did I just reveal that I've got psychological issues?
Yes. Go and have some coffee.
It's kind of like, well, thanks, Scoop.
Yeah.
I always have reservations towards any feelings towards the rankings, because
I thought you meant feelings in general.
Just feelings in general. Yeah, true. I am emotionally unavailable as a person. And also when it comes to cricket stats, because I just don't feel like these rankings ever are overly reflective. I mean, it always depends on who you've played.
They only mean something if you're number one. That's
Exactly. That's the thing. They only, sorry for the thunder. They only mean
I'm getting
something.
It here too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Madness. They only mean something if you're on top. That's the only time anyone ever talks about them, is when their country is on top.
Yep.
So
exactly.
I think probably when I look at these rankings, I probably think the one day is maybe more closely aligned to, I do think Australia are probably the top ODI side. I don't think we are the top test side. I still think that's India.
Oh,
well, we're going to find out in a few weeks' time in the test match in the Oval. I think Australia narrowly are the top test side. If you could find the perfect neutral venue, which I always say, Menace, I think that annoys Menace, I'm not sure, but if you could find the perfect neutral venue and have all the sides play a proper league of 6 months of test cricket where they play each other 5 times, I think Australia would top the league. Wouldn't that be a spectacle?
That doesn't annoy me, Paul. That's not one of the many things that you do that annoys me. Anyway, let's get into the headlines, brought to you by Piccolo Podcast. Australia has fought back from 1-0 down in the series to win the series in India 2-0. the last two matches were absolutely sublime for Aussie fans. In the second match, they won in 11 overs. So they scored the runs with 39 overs to spare, with 10 wickets in hand. Mitchell Starc took 5 for 53. Sean Abbott, 3 for 23. Nathan Ellis, 2 for 13. Bowled India out for 117. Then Mitchell Marsh and Travis Head knocked off the runs. Jelisa, I mean, that is the most dominating performance I've seen Australia play in India.
Yeah, for sure. And the only problem is that unless you, like us, follow a lot of cricket, a lot of people didn't follow it and it was, once again, this comes back to probably a free-to-air broadcaster. If they just tapped into it and put it on free-to-air, I think so many more people would have had more interest in it and would have actually known it was on. It wasn't very well. I mean, what Cricket Australia, I think, need to do is, even when they don't have, a free-to-air broadcaster here, or they don't have a stake in selling tickets here or whatever, they're still got to start and promote these games a bit better. So even though there's no financial benefit to them directly, because they're not trying to sell tickets or anything like that, they still, for the general good of cricket in Australia, have got to get better at promoting these games.
It's very true. And I've said it before that if, Cricket Australia has no involvement when the rights to these matches are sold by the BCCI. Free-to-air TV has long since forgotten that they could actually televise anything outside of Australia other than the Ashes. Yet if Cricket Australia had said to the BCCI and Channel 9 or 7 or 10 or someone, let's just actually find a way to get it on Gem, starting at 7 o'clock it would have got really good ratings. It would have done really well. I think there's a way that they could do it that's not going to make everyone impoverished. But I think it does reflect the difference in the way that one-day cricket is perceived in the two countries. I think that these games were quite well watched in India, and there's a lot of interest. And it annoys me to say this, but no one in Australia knew they were on.
They didn't.
No one knew it at all. And
but since this new TV deal, no one knows when the games are on, when they're played in Australia as well. So
yeah, that's true, but that's a separate that's a separate point. That this has always been the way with these sorts of matches. And it just shows the way that one-day cricket is kind of declining a little bit in the eyes of Australians. It's a pity, because take the way that Australians, the Aussies, performed after those first two tests, our credibility was on the line. That if it had continued and it had been, a 4-0 whitewash, and then India had won this series comfortably as well, then there would have been this feeling, oh, well, the Australia-India rivalry has diminished somewhat because Australia is no longer actually as competitive as they need to be on the field, and India would have moved beyond. So the fact that they have performed so well in the sort of the second and third of the tour really does restore our credibility. I think that's a really important point.
And also, I guess if you put the two series together, they finished 3-3. So kind of it's a drawn tour. And so I mean, they still get to keep the Border Gavaskar trophy. So in that second match, Mitchell Starc took his 9th 5-wicket haul in ODI cricket. Now, that puts him equal third. He's only done that in 110 matches. Murali Dhuran took 10 in 350 matches. Brett Lee took 9, the same as Starc, in double the amount of matches as Starc, 221. So, that is an incredible strike rate for Mitchell Starc. He takes a wicket every 26 balls in ODI cricket. Paul, as a lover of stats, this is phenomenal.
I thought Waqar Yunus would be somewhere in those stats.
Oh, he's the top, but he took 13.
Got it.
He took 13, 262 matches.
No, these stats they're interesting, but I'd much prefer to just look at average economy rate and strike rate. But it does show that when Stark's on, he's really on, and he's destructive. It's an interesting point that he was so amazing when he was doing that, but then in the final game, when it was demonstrably a spinning, spinners were favoured, he went the journey a little bit. I think Australia's got to get a little bit better at reading pitches and adjusting their side accordingly, maybe.
It's funny, Mitchell Starc, I find, has always been had this strange rhetoric around him where I think he is underrated at times, and he's probably at times, because he has been expensive in spells, that then seems to tarnish a lot of what he does. And I do always feel like there's even this rhetoric around, oh, he cleans up the tail. And actually I think it was someone, I think it was Lockie McCurdy maybe actually did the breakdown of the wickets, and it actually isn't the tail isn't the majority of his wickets. So I think he's actually quite underrated.
I agree. I mean, you look at you put all the wickets together across the 3 formats for Australia. You look at the fact that he's sacrificed a lot of money in the IPL to prioritise playing for Australia. He got a bit of an unfair rap when Warney gave him a serve a few years ago about his attitude. And that kind of, I think, hovered over his reputation for a while. But I agree with you, Jelisa. He maybe isn't valued enough by the Australian public.
Warney's,
and I think it's partly...
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's partly to do with his personality. He sort of shies away from the media. He's not a particularly outgoing guy. So I think he sort of comes under the radar a bit.
But Warney's criticism of him was nonsense. Saying that he's well.
Let's not speak of the RIP Shane Warne.
Yeah.
I'm very sad that Shane Warne is dead, and I've said I gave him a tribute within hours of him dying. I think about it all the time. It's a devastating tragedy that he's dead. But what he said about Stark was idiotic. The fact that Stark needs to show better body language on the field. I think even Mark Taylor at the time said what Stark's got to do is hit the top of off stump, and that's this whole concept of body language and the importance of it was silly. That was consistent with Warney. 4 out of 5 times he was a fantastic commentator. And 1 out of 5 times he said a bit of nonsense, but that kind of added to his aura.
Yeah, I think what you might be right, Menas, is maybe his personality also plays in a little bit. That none of those fast bowlers, maybe except for Pat Cummins, are particularly like warm sort of people. I'm not saying that they're bad people, they're not nice people, but they're not kind of people that go seeking any public attention or I don't even think particularly like doing the media side of things. They just want to play cricket, and probably that does play into his persona a little bit.
Stark strikes me as an intelligent person who's quite wary of the media. I suspect he's had a few times where he's had a statement, twisted a little bit, or a headline made out of nothing, and he's kind of a bit wary.
I also think
just ask him about his golf game, then it'll lighten up.
Yeah, and I'm sure him and Elisa too are quite protective of their relationship as well, and so often they're not like super open people, so maybe that plays into it a bit. Always very nice though, both of them, but you might be right, Menas, there might be something to be said there.
I'll never forget Elisa Healy coming over to my house to record a podcast once. I mean, that's how lovely she is. So I'm sure you're great couple. Stark 9 5-wicket hauls in ODI cricket. Then in match 3, Australia made 269 batting first. They were bowled out in the 49th over. And India, in reply, were dismissed for 248. Both innings were fairly similar. They got off to a quick start against the new ball, but then in the middle overs, lost wickets and slowed down. Adam Zampa for Australia took 4 for 45. Ashton Agar took 2 for 41. So an incredible performance from Australia. They sealed the series 2-1. What did you think, Paul?
India looked like they're going to win. They were 2 out for 120 odd and cruising. And then again, they had another partnership later on, and fantastic that the Aussies won, because 270 odd was a good score, but a gettable score. And I think there'd have been a point during the chase that India would have been long odds on. So for Australia to come back and win, it's tremendously thrilling, really, given that how difficult it is to beat India in India. It is a fantastic achievement, and they should be rightfully really proud of it. It restores, I said the other day, how if Australia had lost, then it would mean that in one-day cricket in India, the head-to-head record would be dead equal. So the fact that Australia won the last game means that Australia is 2 ahead. So I think that's pretty cool.
I thought the turning point was when Agar got Coley and then Yadav next ball. And I sort of thought Agar looked a bit flat until then. He has had a really bad couple of months, bounced in and out of the test squad and, that poor performance at the Sydney Test. And he looked pretty flat in the game until he got Coley. Then he got Yadav, 3 golden ducks in the series. I just cannot believe that. But I think bowled or LBW to start twice and then bowled first ball off Agar. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
It's incredible. His reaction after the third one, you had to feel sorry for him. He hung his head. I think another turning point was also the dismissal of Rahul by Zampa, Abbott catching him on the boundary, where India at that stage were 2 for 146 in the 28th over and looking like they were well on top. I think I mentioned it on a radio interview I did, but I don't think I mentioned it on the podcast how impressed I was, and I saw a lot of people were impressed on Twitter with the reaction of Ashton Agar when he came back to Perth Airport. Did we talk about it on the podcast? I can't remember. But he'd been dumped out of the test side quite ignominiously, really. He's arrived at Perth Airport, would have every right to have the headphones on and the sunglasses on and just sort of walk through. And he stopped and gave a detailed, open, honest, just very refreshingly upbeat interview and just answered all the questions. I thought it was really impressive.
To Channel 10.
Was it? Yes. Well, there you go.
Yeah. It was Ash, our reporter over there. She went and interviewed him, and she said he was super. She was kind of just hitting and hoping, and she went over there, and he was really gracious. She said, and more than willing to give his time.
So it's nice that he then got to actually play a game. Otherwise, it would have been quite something to have gone over there twice and for weeks and weeks and weeks and not play a single game.
Yeah.
So, Jelisa, in the last match, David Warner batted at number 4 in an out of position, head and Mitch Marsh opened. Where do you think Warner's future is at right now?
I think that potentially the concussion might have bought him some time. Having been out of the series, I think that then playing no further part in that test series, I think actually in a roundabout way was a good thing for him, because I think if he would have been a part of that kind of capitulation that we had, minus the last one, but I think maybe the writing would have been on the wall for the Ashes, but I actually think it's actually bought him some time.
And do you think you'll stick around for the 50 over World Cup?
I think if he wants to, he could. I think it's going to be, they're going to leave it as much up to him. I don't think that he's going to be pushed, but I guess it's whether he has that desire to or not. I really think a lot rests on the Ashes. If you win the Ashes over there, is if you're not going to want to finish like that your whole international career.
I think he'll want to stay on for the 50 over World Cup and potentially beyond that. I've always wanted him in my side. I've never been one to want to drop him. I certainly would want him if I was picking the squad for the World Cup. If it started tomorrow, I'd have him in the squad.
Yeah.
I'm not even for the first time ever. I'm not 100% sure if he's in my top 11 right at this moment. I'm not sure. It's not because of anything other than we just seem to have so many players vying for selection. You could pick. I reckon you could name 17 or 18 players who wouldn't be out of place in our top 11.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a chance that Warner sticks around for the 50 over World Cup, even if he doesn't play in the Ashes, if he retires from Test cricket and says he wants to have his swan song at the 50 over World Cup. And judging by the way the selectors have gone in the past, I don't think they'll move him on.
I think at the moment he's like almost he'd be 90% to be in the World Cup. Like he's almost certain to be there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he averages over 50 in ODI cricket in India. So he's got an imposing record. I mean, Paul, would you have, because I like Warner opening, to be honest. I think if Warner plays, he's got to open. I think it's stupid to put him in the middle order. Jelisa, would you experiment with Warner down the order? Like, I think why Mitch Marsh should open. Warner's an opener.
I don't hate it probably as much as you do. I guess it depends on everyone around. Yeah, I see your point. If you've got Mitch Marsh further up, that probably, and that's the only place that you're then going to have to put him, it probably doesn't work as well. But I don't know. I can't see him playing on to the World Cup.
Okay. All right. There we go. Warner's pull up stumps
just
early.
because I feel like I think, like I said, I think a lot of risk depends on the Ashes. If he wins the Ashes, I think that's going to be the perfect way to end your career, your international.
Because I see the opposite. I think if he has a great Ashes,
really
score some hundreds, we come home 4-0 victors. We put Bazball to shame. Warner scores a couple of tons. He's like, I'm going to the World Cup. He's belligerent. He's a fighter. But the opposite, if he gets towed up by Broad and gets bowled, he thinks, so you know what? I'm going to retire. I'm going to play T20 cricket and spend some time with my lovely family.
I get the feeling he's the kind of player that would want to leave on a high. And I also feel like he's, for the last maybe 18 months, kind of really hinted that it's getting to the end. And I just don't think he would want to go through another World Cup campaign.
Okay.
I think he will. I think he's and I think that the Ashes probably, I mean, I'm not saying he's 100%, but I think he's 90% to play in the World Cup. And I think the Ashes probably doesn't, whether Australia win or lose, they'll look at that as Test cricket, different to one-day cricket, and he'll play on into the World Cup. I agree with
that. It's more whether he would want to.
I reckon he will.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, Paul, you mentioned like the squeeze in the Australian side. Like there's just 17 players. Now you look at these. Well, we'll start with the bowlers, like the fast bowlers. Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood aren't there for this ODI series. You've got Nathan Ellis, Sean Abbott, and of course Mitchell Starc, who actually seem to really suit those conditions. Now, I think Hazlewood's proven himself to be a great 50-over bowler in any conditions. Same with Cummins. But I just don't know how all these players are going to fit into an 11. Some big names are going to have to miss out. Hazlewood could miss out. Cummins could miss out. I mean, it's very tight.
It is. And I think the thing that makes it so complex is that it to a significant extent, it depends on what pitches are served up. Because if it's a pitch where there's a little bit in it for the fast bowlers, then you're always going to want to have players like Cummins and Hazlewood and Starc in there. If it's a pitch where depth of batting might be more significant and it's kind of like an absolute belter that everyone's going to get smashed around, then I'd sort of say, well, that brings players like Abbott in because, he's going to offer so much more with the bat. You'd be tempted then to say, well, we've got Stoinis, we've got Maxwell, we've got potentially Mitch Marsh if he's bowling more. We can get more overs out of them. Let's go deeper with the batting. Cameron Green as well. So, it's a difficult one. I really do like Ellis though. I think that Ellis is probably in my top 11 and then you're right. It starts to get the squeeze because if it's a sort of a typical pitch, you want Zampa in there, you want Agar in there, you want Ellis in there. That's already 30 overs done. You're going to get probably 10 out of a part-timer somewhere. Who's the next bowler? You can't really say. They're very unlikely not to pick Cummins, although I think if he is the leader that I like to think he is, he'd have the ability to say, actually, today, guys, I'm sitting it out because I'm not in the best 11. Nothing to criticize me, but that's the way to go. But they're not going to do that. They don't want to omit Starc. They're not going to want to omit Hazlewood. So yeah, it's a logjam.
Jelisa, I mean, looking at this problem, do you think George Bailey and his selection mates were idiots to make Pat Cummins the 50-over captain? I mean, they knew the World Cup was in India. I mean, aren't they muppets for copping out? They didn't want to make a tough decision and, put Warner or Smith in the job. So I think it's coming back to bite them.
No, I disagree with you. Do you take that view because you think that then they're going to be less likely to drop Cummins, or he's going to be less? Yeah. No, I don't agree. I think Cummins has got the kind of resolution in himself where he would happily drop himself. I don't think that he's going to be one of those I truly believe that he could do exactly what Paul said and look and go, well, I'm not in the best 11 and he when he took the captaincy on, he said that he was happy to sit out a game here and there if he needed to. So I think he's smart enough to do that. I still think it's silly having your Test captain, your one day captain, and a T20 captain all the same, because I think you've got to I think they should all be, the ODI captain and the T20 captain should be arguably the same, and then the Test captain completely different, just because I think the workload is just massive on and off the field as a captain. But I don't, and I think there should be separate coaches, but I don't think that he would be stubborn enough to keep himself in there if he thought that he wasn't in the best 11.
We come the first game of the World Cup, and we come, as Paul says, to a dust bowl, and you got Stark, who's going to play, Ellis, great in those conditions. Is Cummins going to say, "Oh no, I'm going to sit out of the first game of the World Cup for team balance"? I don't think he will, and I think we'll probably field not our best 11.
I think the truth is somewhere in between. That I agree with Jelisa that he would have the mental fortitude to do that, but I also agree with Menas, he might not have that. He might not do it as quickly as would have been done if it was taken out of his hands. Like if the selectors were able to just say, right, we're picking our best 11 regardless of who's got the C next to their name, maybe Cummins would be excluded from a match. Whereas if it's up to him, and I think he does have that strength, he might exclude himself, but it might be 2 or 3 matches down the line. And that's where potentially that could be a crucial thing. So I'm fine for Cummins to be the captain if they'd come out right at the time and said, this does not guarantee his place in the 11 in a World Cup. We're going to pick our best 11 regardless of who's got the captain. Given that that's not what they will ever do, for once, I sort of tend to agree with Menas that maybe they shouldn't have made him the ODI captain.
Do you think though that the selectors, if he didn't have the C next to his name, do you think they would drop Pat Cummins for the first game of a World Cup? Because I think it's got way less to do with having the C next to their name, and the way more to do with the affection and the loyalty that they always seem to have towards incumbent players.
I think that's a factor as well. And I think that the Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, they're very reluctant to ever, not that they never do, but that they are reluctant to drop them. Ellis, to get to leapfrog them, Ellis has got to do a lot. And I think that's a problem. I think that it's good that you don't want to be chopping and changing all the time, but I think that they're probably a little bit too reluctant to make those changes when necessary. But I can also understand it because they're 3 absolutely fantastic bowlers, and I'm certainly not dispensing with them. I'd certainly want to have all of them in my World Cup squad. But potentially with the wickets as they might be, I might not always have all 3 or all 2 or even one of them in my 11.
I agree, but I don't think putting the C next to his name actually changes that. I think it's just that affection that they have towards incumbent players.
I think it adds a little bit extra.
I think it adds a lot extra. Anyway, okay, so the fast bowlers have, this squeeze on, but then I also think there's the all-rounders, and this is going to be a tough one for Paul as a devout Glenn Maxwell and Tim David fan. So I think there's, and if you include Tim David, which is just for Paul, you look at 5 all-rounders trying to fit into the Australian side, and you've got
you're including Tim David just for Paul. You remind me of the Jamaican sprinting coach who never said, "Oh, if we consider Usain Bolt just for Paul." Like, come on, he's the best of them all.
No, but I'm saying he's not actually in the consideration for the 50 over World Cup. Like,
I know, because the selectors should be in jail.
Yeah, okay. I'm not arguing with that either.
An appropriate statement would be, and if we throw in Ollie Davies just for Paul.
Yes,
yes, that's true.
But if you look at, you got Marcus Stoinis, Mitch Marsh, Cam Green, maybe all ahead of Glenn Maxwell. I mean, I guess Glenn Maxwell's advantage is he can bowl spin, and then Tim David. I mean, I don't know how all these all rounders are going to fit into the team. I mean, Jelisa, do you think Maxwell will be in the World Cup 11?
I still think Maxwell is better than, and this is going to really trigger you, I still think Maxwell is better than Cam Green.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think that Maxwell has the experience there. He's had more of the power. I still, not that I don't get the fascination with Cam Green, but I'm probably just not as wrapped up as everybody else is in Cam Green just yet. And also with the injuries as well.
Oh, speaking of players that you're not all wrapped up about, how happy were you when Tim Payne retired from first class cricket? Were you like, yay, thank God he's gone? Were you cheering him off the field?
Who's that? I've never heard.
Tim who?
Timothy, is it?
Yeah.
I don't hate Tim Payne. I don't know why you're pushing this narrative.
Well, okay. You haven't listened to the podcast.
Hmm.
Anyway, sorry. Where were we? Oh, with your round.
with
You think?
Maxwell,
Yeah. Well, Paul, what do you think about that statement?
He hates it.
No. Look, regular listeners will know that I normally want Maxwell to be captain, opening batter, opening bowler, and wicketkeeper and prime minister. But and I still think that the best of Maxwell, he's still definitely 11. He's got to give me the best of it. I was disappointed with his dismissal in the first game when we were crying out for a few overs of just take the singles on offer, and he just seems to have one gear. So I don't think it's right batting him all the way down the order. I've always said this. I'd bring him up earlier, give him a chance to thrive with the fielders in. But I need to see something from him. And I'd be saying to him, listen, we want you to be in the side. At your best, you're in the top 11. But at the moment, you've got to show us something.
I agree. When he bats at 8 or 9, that's a bit silly. You don't get the best out of him. I don't know
I
if
find that so bizarre to push him down. When they push him down the order, it's just like, well, he may as well not be there.
Absolutely. So you're right. The squeeze is on. I think the squeeze is really with the fast bowlers and the all-rounders. And the all-rounders will put pressure on the top order. Like, can you have, say, Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith in the middle order because they play a similar type of style?
I think Labuschagne is another one that I'd sort of say I want him in my squad. I don't know how big my squad's going to be. Might have 25 players in it. But at the moment, as much as I like Labuschagne in a World Cup in India, I don't think he's in my best 11. But I certainly I wouldn't dispense with him. I'd still have him in calculations, but he's not my best 11 at the moment.
I think it would be mad to have Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne in the same side in any short format. I just think it's a waste of one of them of a spot. And for me, it's always Steve Smith. And then if he's not available, then Marnus Labuschagne.
I agree. Smith should be captain for the World Cup and in the top order. He should absolutely be captain. I mean, let's wrap up the Indian tour now. So Australia win, the one-day series, lose the Test series. My takeaways are I'm very confident about our 50-over World Cup chances after this series. I think we're looking really good because we actually haven't played a lot of one-day cricket, so it's been hard to sort of tell where our side is. But I think just start printing Australia's name on that cup because we're going to win our sixth World Cup at the end of the year. Looking at the Indian team, look, I wouldn't say they're on the decline. I definitely wouldn't say they're on the decline, but they're not as strong as I think they were, say, a year or two ago. I'm sure they've still got some players coming through, but they're not as scary to me as maybe they were a little while ago. So they have some work to do ahead of the World Cup, absolutely. And my other takeaway is, in the end, the coaching staff messed up this tour for the Australian side. They weren't ready for the first test. They picked the wrong team. Poor planning, poor organisation, poor preparation. Koeman wasn't even in the country. Agar was there. Head didn't play. There was a litany of disasters by the coaching staff that hamstrung the Australians.
That they couldn't predict as well. Like, there's disasters in the fact that you had David Warner out injured. You had Pat Cummins out. There were things along the way that didn't help.
Yeah, but I just think they started badly. They just weren't ready. So my takeaway is, bad tour for the coaching staff. But
it wasn't
the
just
end,
the coaching staff, though, Menace. It's like that's most of those issues that you highlighted were selection issues. You got to let Justin Langer go. He's not.
McDonald's a selector.
You've got to remember we lost a series at home against India with Justin Langer.
Yeah, I'm not. You brought Langer up. I didn't bring him up.
You brought him up indirectly. You brought him up indirectly. You kind of throwbacks to him. They got to end. Like your anti-McDonald stance is a.
I like McDonald.
It's just disingenuous. in the space of 2 minutes, you said Smith can't be captain. Smith's got to be captain, and McDonald's got to go, basically. And it's like you're still bitter at what happened to JL.
I'm not at all. I'm not at all.
He's not going to go out for a beer with you.
I'm not bitter about what happened to JL. I mean, Jelisa, especially you're a journalist. You should just call it the way you see it. You shouldn't. Exactly.
We lost two series against India at home under Langer. There was no.
I didn't bring up Langer. I'm talking about McDonald's. We weren't ready for this tour. That's the coaching stuff.
But I think that's a scheduling issue as well. And Cricket Australia directing the players to play in the Big Bash, which you bizarrely still support, Menace. What they need to do is say, never again can this be allowed to happen. The away tour to India is so important. We've got time between now and 2027. Let us get the schedule, do whatever we have to do so that we get 3-4 clear weeks before that series where the players can be rested and then have proper preparations that they go into the first test on a high. And it was weird to hear McDonald talking about how they didn't need to have that preparation, and they made up the story that we were starting to fade towards the end of the Sri Lanka tour, and that was because we'd had too much time over there. And it's almost like he was trying to make the best of a bad situation. And fair enough.
But why wasn't Kuhneman there for Nagpur? Like on that track, he might have taken a stack of wickets. He was playing, a shield match here. Agar was there, who they couldn't pick because he was bowling so badly. That to me is shithouse. That is, you fly him over for the next match, which I don't know. I just think they made a mozza.
Yeah, but that's a selection issue, not a coaching issue.
Of course, but McDonald's are one of the selectors.
I know, but just use the right word, because if you say coaching issue, it harkens back to Langer. Okay. And I'm saying, so
you brought Langer up. You guys have got to move on from Langer. You guys have to move on.
Whether you want to admit it or not, you were dropping little hints.
Yes, correct.
Sprinkles.
So, Jelisa, what's your takeaway from the Indian tour?
My takeaway from it is that I don't want to buy into what you're saying. This sort of pisses me off. That we do need when you go on an Indian tour that you have to prepare in India, because I think that was probably where things went a little bit. And I could see some of their reasoning why they said, last time they did that, they got served up a green top and they had much more control over the wicket at North Sydney where they were preparing. But, North Sydney's not India. Let's be honest. And the thing is, it's easy for us to say, because, sort of Paul pointed out, we sit here and we go, for 90% of the summer, we sit here going, they've got to make the Big Bash better. We've got to focus on the Big Bash and blah, blah, blah. And then we get angry when that kind of means we've got to sacrifice part of our preparation. But, I think it just did show we probably need to prepare in India next time we're going to India.
Yeah, next time they've just got to say, right, the series starts on this date. For the month before that, there's nothing. It's clear air. And whatever the consequences of that are, then let the chips fall where they will. But for the month before that, the first week and a half is rest. The final 2.5 weeks is preparation at the elite center in the UAE or in Indian first-class conditions, whatever, so that they can go there and they can have that 9 for 52 debacle against an Indian stateside or in the UAE.
Sweep shots too. Just that's it. That's the tweet.
That's your takeaway?
Yeah. Just that killed our whole series. When you look back, that was the pivotal moment that changed everything.
Absolutely. Jelisa, your connection's starting to get a bit scratchy. Can you hear that, Paul?
Yeah, there's a bit of a scratch here.
Do you want to just exit out of the link and come back in again?
Sure. Is it when I talk or is it?
Yeah, when you talk. Just go and come back out again. She was wrong about it. So many things, so it's good she's gone.
You goose.
So the Indian tour is wrapped up. I had a great time covering it. Thanks everybody for listening to all the shows we did about it. Australians will be coming home, but the cricket action stays in India with the IPL beginning at the end of the month. So very soon, Paul and I will be starting our show we're planning to do it like a Monday night called the Super Over. where we wrap up the top 6 issues from the top. Jelisa's back. I think that sounds good. We'll be wrapping up the top 6 issues from the week of the IPL. So, speaking of the IPL, they've instituted a rule that the players, if they get COVID, still have to isolate for 7 days in a hotel room. Most other competitions around the world aren't instituting the same rules anymore. I guess, Jelisa, do you think that some overseas players might be reluctant to play?
No. I mean, if you're still going to get paid and just sit in a hotel room, why the money that you get paid for IPL, why wouldn't you? Like,
It's a good point.
my dream.
It's a very good point.
It's my dream situation. Like, I'd be getting COVID 5 times and just spending the time watching Netflix. Like, no, I don't think that'll deter anyone at all. I think it's slightly bizarre, but it was very bizarre seeing Matt Renshaw with COVID on the field. So, yeah, strange one, but no, I don't think it'll deter anyone.
What I always regret is that I never got to do the 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel on my own, drinking beer for 2 weeks. So that's the sad thing. That
anyway. Everyone who talked about that was like, it was awful, and I'm not going to pretend that they didn't go through their own thing, but I couldn't think of anything better.
It'd be awesome. It'd be amazing.
I loved ISO. I mean, the long COVID was not very nice after it, but the ISO was good.
One thing I think that they should do, if they want to take a lead, it wouldn't actually take much effort to kind of make it very unlikely for the players to get COVID. That if they put HEPA filters into the dressing rooms and if they put proper filtration onto the buses and got the air clean, then they could just about get rid of the issue and take a lead on it, and hopefully governments could follow. I think that would be a better approach. The BCCI got enough money there'd be a trivial expense. And as a player, if I'm sitting in the dressing room thinking, well, sure, Fred's been kicked out for 7 days because he's got COVID, but probably Bob's got it as well. I don't want to get it and then have to miss 7 days myself. And potentially, there's all still that you could get long COVID. You could have a deleterious effect on your career. I'd much rather look around and say, they've spent the couple of $100 to put some proper filters in, and the issue's not gone away, but it's been very much put into the background.
I think that's pretty unrealistic, though, unless you isolated them in their teams. Like, they're still going to go to, like, if they went to a coffee shop or what, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but I mean, they could say once you're out on the field, it's fine. You're not going to get it once you're outside, it's fine. It's just a question of it's basically just dining, and they could, I'm sure, with their power, they could go to a few local hotels and say, listen, can you make sure that there's outdoor areas for these guys to eat it?
Anyway, big IPL. Can't wait for it to start. The Women's Premier League is heading to its conclusion. Meg Lanning's Delhi Capitals have already qualified for the final. Elisa Healy's UP Warriors take on the Mumbai Indians in the Eliminator to see who will play the Delhi Capitals. I'd love it if the UP Warriors, with Talia McGrath and Grace Harris, can win and get into the final and take on Meg Lanning's Delhi Capitals. It's been a great tournament. Have you taken in any of the WPL, Jelisa?
Not as much as I would have liked. I've kind of seen highlights afterwards and really just followed it online just to see, mainly the Aussies, just to see who's done well and that kind of thing. But haven't been able, just because of the timing, haven't been able to watch as much of it as I would have liked.
Been a cracking tournament. Great matches.
I know, and that's
dominated.
That's why I keep reading, is it's been a really good tournament.
What have you made of it, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I watched the highlights of the first game and was impressed with the crowd, and I've watched some other highlights as well. If it was on at a different time, I'd have watched a lot more. But I was reading an article about it in The Guardian today, and they're sort of making the point that on a 7-story building in Mumbai, they've got a big sort of wallscape of several of the WPL players. There's billboards all around the town featuring them. And they're sort of just saying this is like unprecedented, that everyone expected that it would be a success, the tournament, but the level of success and the level of prominence that it has given to women's cricket has even surprised and even upstaged those high expectations. So I think, as we said at the night of the auction, it felt like this is a watershed moment in the history of not just women's cricket, but of cricket. And I think this has confirmed it. I think the sport is never going to be the same again, and it's wonderful.
Agree. So looking forward to the conclusion of that tournament. The standard has been excellent. So congratulations to the organisers. Last headline. I'd love it if Cricket Unfiltered could head to the United States of America because Major League Cricket is starting. Aaron Finch and Marcus Stoinis have signed for the San Francisco Unicorns. Mitch Marsh has signed for. That's what they're called, and it's a reference to that tech. When they call a tech company a unicorn.
Fair enough. Yep.
And Mitch
I wasn't
Marsh
laughing at you. I was laughing at the name of the team.
Yeah. Signed for the Seattle Orcas. So that's the first round of signings by Australians. So Major League Cricket is starting. Actually, the organisers said that Australia's red ball players are out of contention for Major League Cricket, but can't wait for that. Texas Super Kings. Not sure yet, but Chennai Super Kings have partnered with the Texas team, so they're called the Texas Super Kings, and the Mumbai Indians. It looks like they're going to own the New York franchise. So it is all happening in the United States of America.
Pretty exciting, yeah. It's good.
I'd like to get someone on from the Major League Cricket to tell us a little bit more about it. All right, so that's it for the cricket headlines. Let's get into Can't Let It Go, that little bit of cricket news you just can't let go of. All right, it's Can't Let It Go. Jelisa, do you have a Can't Let It Go?
I didn't think of a Can't Let It Go this week.
Yeah.
I think I was going to have a bit of a rant about, but I already did, about Cricket Australia not promoting their own product. But I've already done that, so I haven't let that go. Okay,
good. Paul, what's your Can't Let It Go?
I just noticed that the IPL is going to bring in a rule change, and that the team is get to name their playing 11 after the toss. And so that's something that they started in the South African T20 competition. And I think one of the reasons apparently is to try to eliminate the fact that dew has been such a big factor, that I think that when you've got to bowl with the dewy ball later on, it's been very difficult. So sides have wanted to bowl first. So if you lose the toss now, you can say, and you have to bat first, then you can sort of say, well, maybe we can reshape the lineup a little bit accordingly. I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think that maybe it's worth considering for the 50 over World Cup, because it would be a pity if, as was the case in the last T20 World Cup, where if you batted first, you were in difficulty. It would be a pity if that was to be the case in the upcoming 50 over World Cup as well. So that is one of my Can't Let It Goes. I'll pause for comment if there are any.
Not really. I don't mind the rule change. It's not as exciting as DRS for wides and stuff, but it's still a good rule change.
And the other one is thanks to listener Cameron Peaty. I mentioned how I'd be interested in some stats.
Is he nicer than Michael Viney, that idiot? Sorry, go on.
Michael, I apologise on behalf of the show
Michael.
for menace.
He should apologise for being rude. Go on.
I think you've been 1,000 times ruder than him.
I think you're just a meanie.
6 for 178 in the Sheffield Shield final at the moment, with Victoria batting first over there in the West. Chandra Singh, 38 not out of 227 balls. Strike rate of 16.
What are we doing now? Is this Can't Let It Go?
Sheffield Shield stats.
I just thought, the domestic season hasn't ended. You might have thought it's ended for Menace, but it's still going.
All right. So do you want to hear my Can't Let It Go?
Well, I'd like to finish mine, if that's okay.
He's got a second one.
Yeah. So thanks to Cameron Peaty, and he sent me some detailed stats. A good search on Cricinfo. We're talking about has Jimmy Anderson's amazing bowling average in recent years, where he's averaging around about the 20 mark, is that totally attributable to the fact that he's just become more and more brilliant as his career has gone on, or is it just easier for bowlers in England these days? And I've only had I haven't studied it in great depth, but just looking at it here, Jimmy Anderson was about of fast bowlers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth best in the first 10 years of his career in England. And of fast bowlers, he's the 1, 2, 3, fourth best since in the more recent 10 years. So certainly he's averaged 20.9 versus his average back in those first 10 years of 27.7. I think the jury's still out. I need to look at a few more stats. But thanks for the research, Cameron. Much appreciated.
You probably need just looked at, some comparative stats with someone else, maybe like a Stuart Broad. He's like kind of dropped off a little bit now, but Jimmy hasn't.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm sure Stuart Broad. What, man, as you give your Can't Let It Go, I won't listen to it, but I'm sure the listeners will. I'll just look up the Stuart Broad stats.
Sorry, I wasn't listening to your last one.
Thank you. I know.
I was.
All right, so my Can't Let It Go is the PSL, the Pakistan Super League, was played this week, and the final was an absolute cracker. The Lahore Qalandars batted first and made 200 for 6. Shaheen Shah Afridi hit 44 off just 15 balls. And then with the ball, he took 4 for 51, and they beat the Sultans by just 1 run in an absolute thriller. Ooh. Tim David lost the match He lost the match. He played for the Sultans. He scored 20 off 16 balls. So he's not the Messiah like you think he is. So his team went down, and it's been touted as the best PSL final ever. And it was a great game. I saw the highlights. Paul, have you got Stuart Broad's stats analysis?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, actually. I haven't done it. It's in Cameron's list. He averaged
interesting. Sorry, go on.
He averaged 24.64 in the last 10 years, and in the first 10 years, so from 2000 prior to 2013, he averaged 28.74. So he's improved significantly as well. So that would be to my point that part of the reason that Jimmy Anderson has improved, that it's just got better for fast bowlers in England in the last 10 years. So Menners, I'm sure you've been really enjoying that, but I think it's actually a pretty interesting point.
All right, and, now if anyone's go on.
I was just going to also just give you Tim Davids' T20 stats for his career. He's averaging 31.7 at a strike rate of 163. So one game where he's not done quite so well.
Same facts.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine to give the result, but then to draw a thing and say that that one match counts more than the 100.
So you're saying he's the Messiah?
I
said he's not the Messiah. So you're saying he's the Messiah?
Of course he's the Messiah. Look at those stats.
All right. Well, this has been fun. I've got to get into the Para Eels game.
Yes. Okay, Jelisa. Thanks so much. Just quickly, we've got some comments here in the YouTube chat. Mr. Garg, Jalisa's prediction of the Test series is rest in peace. What the shit she was saying before the Test series, 3-1 in favour of Australia. She was gone mad. I have to agree with him.
How about that? That was
you called me mad before the series, but turns out you were the crazy one.
No, but I called you mad from various other things, which still
and you're wrong.
But
Praveen Kumar.
You predicted 4-0. You predicted 4-0 for India. That's not a great prediction either.
I'm not Mr. Gargs. I'm not.
No, but you took a lot of joy in it, and you were thinking about Justin Langer while you said it as well.
Yeah.
Praveen Kumar. I actually was. Praveen Kumar. If they were the number 1 Test team, they should have won both home and away. But the Aussies lost in both countries. Praveen, the rankings are done on consistent performances.
Yeah, but he's saying the rankings are shit, which I kind of agree with.
I'm not arguing, but they went to England last year and got beaten in that match, and they're not exactly good travellers everywhere. And last question we have to answer. This is for you, Paul. Martin Lawrence wants to know if the Sheffield Shield final was ever broadcast in Australia before pay TV. This is right in your wheelhouse. Jelisa, if you need to go, just go. I mean, this could be an hour.
I'm here.
It's a great question, Martin. In the early days, they would have broadcast it definitely into the local area only because they didn't have the capacity there were no satellites and they couldn't send it further than that. So 56-7, they started broadcasting the Shield, and they would have done that in the local areas for in Sydney and Melbourne initially only. But then by the time that I can remember, I don't think that they'd ever have it on free-to-air, except I'd say they probably had it in Perth and Brisbane a fair bit in free-to-air when they were in the final because there's, they're a little bit more parochial maybe than Sydney because our players tend to play on the Test side. So, look, I've just offended everyone there. I don't think I can't recall it ever being on free-to-air TV in Sydney, although it might have been, but certainly in the early days it was.
Great question, Martin. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. No Cricket Unfiltered next week. We're taking the week off. We'll be back the week after with some IPL stuff. If you like true crime, I'm producing a new podcast. It's called Adam Shand at Large. I'll put the link in the show notes. I'm actually on it a bit, but if it's with a really good
you're
true
cool.
What was that?
You want it as you're one of the suspects.
I thought it was going to be, when he said I'm producing a true crime podcast, I thought he was going to be like the homicide of Justin Langer's coaching.
There'll be some cricket stuff, don't worry. So I'll put the link in the show notes, but if you like true crime, he's one of Australia's leading true crime journalists. So I'm thrilled to be working with him. Jelisa, great. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Pleasure.
Enjoy the football.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
See ya. Bye.